Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to talk about the natal chart of Charles Manson. Charles Manson, as many of you may know, was an infamous cult leader. I'm going to talk about some placements in his chart that may have been tied into his very depraved and appalling behavior and actions. But first, I'm going to talk about his sun, moon, and ascendant combination. Had a sun in Scorpio, and sun in Scorpio may want to manipulate. With the moon in Aquarius now, this could be people and groups and friends. And having a Taurus ascendant, he may have done this by preaching peace and even engaging in sensual acts. And Gina, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, Gina Avery was a renowned astrologer. She wrote in a book entitled The Rising Sign, in the Taurus rising section. She wrote something about Charles Manson having sunk to the depths of depravity, and that might be a vast understatement. Now, his afflicted moon in Aquarius may have manifested in very idiosyncratic and non-conforming, I'd say bizarre behavior that he may have unconsciously been expressing. Now, Charles Manson had the majority of his planets on the top half of the chart, and that could indicate more just simply being more extroverted, more gregarious than introverted, more objective than subjective. I don't really know about that though. And more optimistic than pessimistic. He probably was optimistic about manipulating the people he had into committing those heinous murders. But anyway, and again, another thing about his chart, giving it a little more of a pictorial look, is that the majority of his planets fell in the first. They were on the right. He had most of his planets on the right half of the chart, and that can indicate being more dependent as opposed to being self-reliant, preferring to collaborate with others on projects and endeavors, in contrast to doing them by himself. He got a lot of those people to do the work. His dastardly deeds for him, basically. And now the thing is, the majority of his planets, as far as the quadrants go, they fell in the second quadrant. And the second quadrant consists of houses 4, 5, and 6, and that's where the family was his focus. And I don't know, the fifth house is children, and then the sixth house is the daily routine, working laboriously to support them. I don't know how much work he actually put in, though, to really helping anybody. I don't know if he had, I believe he had children, but you want to confer that on the internet, look online for that. And the thing is, to his final signature is Scorpio, and that when you do ascertain the final signature, for those of you that don't know, that is done by taking the majority of what one has in a quality and an element in their chart and equating it to a zodiac sign, which is the final or chart signature. His is in Scorpio. So, I mean, he already has a dominant Scorpio energy in the chart, but the fact that his final or chart signature is in Scorpio can reaffirm and reinforce that existing Scorpio energy. It's really what a final signature is. It's supposed to give an overall tone or feel to the chart, but I don't believe it supersedes the sun, moon, or ascendant in terms of its significance or impact on the chart. However, as I stated before, what it does is it reaffirms the already existing dominant and Scorpio energy in the chart. And this could be in nature. Again, that could be very manipulative, obsessive, jealous, vengeful person. Unfortunately, this is somebody that somebody probably was very surreptitious, very sneaky as well, and obsessive with all that Scorpio, this dominant Scorpio energy, and he brought out he had a lot of the negative qualities of Scorpio. And he's probably was very secretive as well, having not just the dominant Scorpio energy, but the Scorpio final signature in addition to that. And Another thing too is the thing is Charles Manson, as you know, many of you know, he strongly indoctrinated and manipulated his followers. A lot of that again was attributed to, I believe, his dominant Scorpio energy in his chart. He had 4 planets in Scorpio, and again the final signature in Scorpio. And all those planets that he had in Scorpio, all were either in the 7th house of relationships or conjunct the 7th house cusp from the 6th house. Now he also has Pluto in Cancer, and it's involved in the Grand Cross configuration, which can suggest a Grand Cross to bear in his life with much tribulation. He did wind up obviously being incarcerated for what he did, and the thing is, he really caused a lot of problems for people by what he did. Really, he may have caused more adversity and tribulation for others than he actually did indeed for himself, though. But anyway, um, the thing about this is in his chart, Pluto squared his Jupiter in Scorpio. Now that's a strong indicator of indoctrinating others with beliefs. And the thing is, sadly, in this case with Jupiter and Scorpio, there may have been beliefs as far as murdering others. And Pluto is also retrograde in this chart. Now, that could be an indicator of having his followers do this because without him doing it directly, because retrograde energy is indirect energy. And the thing is, Pluto in Cancer, though it's generational, by itself may indicate one manipulating and controlling his or her family. And it's also in his 4th house of the home and family. Now, perhaps doing this gave him in his mind some kind of safety and security with this being in the 4th house. Now, I want to talk about Charles Manson's mental health. As far as his mental health goes, now his dominant afflicted Scorpio energy in a negative manifestation could be expressed in deep psychological issues. He also had Uranus and Aries in the 12th house of mental illness. Now, with this being afflicted, it wouldn't surprise me if he had some kind of intermittent explosive disorder, actually. It could be in Uranus in the 12th house, could be an indicator of an unusual mental illness. And Uranus is also a singleton in his chart. With it being a singleton, it may be more pronounced and stand out more in the chart. He had been clinically diagnosed with schizophrenia and paranoid delusional disorder. He has Neptune, which is the planet that's associated with schizophrenia, making a long, you could say, semi-square to his natal Mercury. And Mercury, of course, is the planet connected to rational thinking, and he has it in Scorpio. And the thing is, Neptune, of course, can be, the planet is connected with things that are delusional. Mercury, again, is the rational mind. Scorpio can be very skeptical and suspicious energy. Now, what I want to get at, too, is that the fact that look at this chart a little bit more. Now, the chart, well, I'll talk a little more about his Mercury and Scorpio. Again, Scorpio can be very suspicious energy. I would believe sometimes it can, in a negative manifestation, extreme cases, Scorpio energy can actually be paranoid, but that's in very extreme, behavior of the sign. And the thing is, he also had Pisces, which is the sign associated with schizophrenia. It was on the cusp of his 12th house of mental illness, and he also had Mercurial Gemini on the cusp of the 3rd house of the rational mind at the 29th degree, a critical one. It's also can reflect the full culmination of the sign. Now, I would not be surprised. The 29th degree is the anaretic crisis degree. Now, I would not be surprised if he had some manic depressive bipolar issue, which may not have been either disclosed or diagnosed. The thing is, too, his Neptune also, his Neptune makes a conjunction to Mars, and that may have manifested him strongly integrating drugs with sex. He likely drugged women in order to have sex with them. Now, with this conjunction being in Virgo, this may have been done very systematically and methodically. And with this being in the fifth house, it was something that he likely strongly enjoyed as well. Hold on a moment, people. Now the thing too is, I want to look at as well, the fact, I think too, when I look at astrology, maybe it has a warped sense of humor at times, because Charles Manson was a cult leader, and he had his ascendant at 5 degrees Taurus. Now, if I'm not mistaken, actor Al Pacino has his sun at or near that degree. And some of you may remember he was in that movie, The Devil's Advocate, and it had Keanu Reeves in it as well. And he played, Al Pacino actually played Lucifer in that movie. Now, I'm not saying, 5 degrees Taurus is demonic or malevolent position by any means, but I just thought it was very ironic, though. And I know Al Pacino was just playing a role in that movie. But, Charles Manson was somebody that was very malevolent, and I thought, in my opinion anyway, some people don't believe evil really exists, but I think that Charles Manson was pure evil. In my opinion, I thought he was very deranged. I really believed that, and I thought he saw him as somebody that was very nefarious. But anyway, now I want to talk about Charles Manson and his death. Now, his death, Charles Manson's death, was the result of a cardiac arrest, and it was a result of respiratory failure, which came from colon cancer. Now, Scorpio by itself can have a propensity toward issues with the colon. Now, Jupiter can have a connection with Cancer, and is in Scorpio, which is associated with the colon. And Jupiter also is about enlargement, exacerbation. So this could be enlarging issues with that. And the thing is, Scorpio is also the sign associated with death. He has his he has Mercury. He had Mercury, which rules breathing and respiration, conjunct his Jupiter. And he also had his natal Pluto, which rules the colon, in the 4th house of the end of life. Now, at the time of his passing, the transit Sun, which rules the heart, Sun rules the heart, was in Scorpio, again connected with the colon. And it was making an inconjunct aspect to his natal Uranus, the planet of unpredictability, in spontaneous Aries, in the 12th house of hospitals. Now, another thing is that transit Jupiter was at least loosely conjunct his natal Jupiter in Scorpio. He was in his Jupiter return. Now, this may have enlarged issues with that Cancer of the colon, having the transit Jupiter at least making a loose conjunction to the natal Jupiter in Scorpio. Now, it also made a loose opposition to his Taurus ascendant, which is associated with the physical body. Now, this transit likely very adversely affected that latent Taurus rising powers of endurance. Transit Uranus was also conjunct his natal Uranus, at least loosely conjunct his natal Uranus. He was in his Uranus return, obviously, and it was in the 12th house of hospitalization. Let's see if I can look at this a little bit more. See the chart more. Now, I want to see, now he was, again, he was going through his Uranus and Jupiter return at the time of his death, and also the ruler, he had the ruler of his 4th house of life, which is the moon in Aquarius, in his 10th house, now suggesting that latter part of life, the end of life, was going to be one which gains certain notoriety and recognition. With the ruler of that 4th house, the moon, being an Aquarius, it's not surprising that this was well publicized on the internet, social media. The ruler of his 8th house of death, which is Jupiter, again is in Scorpio. That's related to the colon, but it also falls in the 7th house of legalities. Now, when he died, there was a battle over his estate. Um, Jupiter rules the law, and Scorpio is associated with estates and wills. So really, people, that's pretty much all I got to say on this, and we have to hope that we don't run too many more people like Charles Manson exist. These people, I mean, he's very malevolent and nefarious. Again, I believe he gave Taurus rising people certainly a bad name. He gives them a bad name, but we know that most Taurus ascendant people are actually benign and benevolent, and they're about peace and tranquility and stability. What a lot of this was his afflicted Scorpio energy. But keep in mind too that Taurus is, though they're about peace and tranquility, negative Taurus energy can also, again, as Gene Avery had stated about him sinking to the depths of depravity. It could also, emphasize, sensuality almost to the exclusion of everything else. And Taurus rising can be very persuasive, and if it's really negatively expressed, I believe it can be about manipulation. So that might have played a role in him being very manipulative as well, not just the Scorpio energy being afflicted, but the Taurus rising energy as well being afflicted. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.